Hi everybody, my name is Traci Chen and today we're going to talk about the skilled nominated 190 visa in New South Wales. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the principal lawyer at Mason Chen Law Group. I'll leave our details down below, so if you want to get in contact with us and have a consultation with myself or one of our lawyers, you can contact us on the link below. The skilled nominated 190 visa in New South Wales. It has actually been very surprising throughout the year, and I want to talk about some of the trends, some of the things that I've seen happen over the past financial year so that we can be prepared for the next financial year. So first of all, the 190 visa in general, you must be invited to apply. So some people have said, oh, I've looked in the IMI account, I tried to apply for the 190 visa, I can't apply, why is that? That's because you actually have to be invited to apply. So actually you first need to create a skill select account, enter an expression of interest to apply, and I'll talk about how to do that soon. And then if your application is picked up, you'll be invited. And once you've been formally invited, in the expression of interest, there'll actually be an apply now button, which will take you to the IMI account where you can complete the application details. So first of all, unlike other states, for New South Wales, it is just through an expression of interest on Skills Select. Other states operate a little bit differently. You actually have to fill in another form on the state's website. But I guess New South Wales have made it a little bit simpler, so you just have to do it through Skills Select, which I think that there's some good and bad to that. So I'll talk about that later on in the video. So very basic requirements to apply for a Skills Select. You need to be under 45 years of age. You need to have at least competent English, which is 6 in each band. However, because of competition, you need to be aiming higher. To be honest, majority of our clients have equivalent of superior English, which is 8 in each band for IELTS or 79 in each band for PTE. So that gives you an idea of basically what you'll be up against. Now you must have an occupation on that occupation list. So the 190 visa has specific occupations that they only invite for, and then New South Wales is only inviting specific occupations, but let's just talk about generally the skills select for now. Need to have an occupation on that occupation list. And then you need a valid skills assessment on that occupation list. Valid skills assessment. So depending on the occupation, you need to apply for a skills assessment with the relevant skills assessing body. So for example, accountant, you can apply through CPA. For engineers like mechanical engineer and civil engineer, you need to apply through Engineers Australia. For occupations such as ICT business analyst, you'll need to apply through Australian Computer Society. And then occupations such as cafe and restaurant manager, you would apply through Vet Assess. Now you need to make sure that skills assessment has not expired. So again, this changes from a skills assessing body to skills assessing body. So just from the top of my head, I'm pretty sure Vet Assess is valid for a period of 3 years. Engineers Australia is also for a period of 3 years. But from memory, Australian Computer Society is only 2 years. Now I know that sounds like a long time, but with everything that's been happening, with the delays, a lot of our clients have had to redo their skills assessments. A lot of the skills assessing bodies don't renew skills assessment. You have to go through like the process again. Okay, so that was a very general, broad overview for the requirements for the 190 visa. Now, as I said, you have to be nominated by the state. And today's video is specifically about New South Wales. So let's talk about what New South Wales are looking for to invite you. Okay, so to be invited for the 190 visa in New South Wales, you must have completed your expression of interest on Skills Select and have all the elements that I just spoke about previously. Now we need to look specifically at what the New South Wales requirements now. I'm super excited for the new financial year. I think there's going to be heaps of changes. A little bit about what happened last year so that you guys can have a good idea of what's going on. Basically, there were 2 cohorts. There was the onshore applicants and the offshore applicants. So onshore means you're living currently here in Australia. And there was 2 main requirements. So for the first stream, it was you had to be living and working in New South Wales in your nominated occupation. You could apply for a 190 straight away. You could apply for an expression of interest to be invited for the 190 visa in New South Wales. And depending on what your occupation is, there are certain requirements. So for some occupations, you need at least 3 years of work experience in that nominated occupation. So I think, for example, ICT business analyst in New South Wales needed 3 years work experience. And the trickiest thing is that this 3 years work experience is actually counted after the date deemed skilled on your skills assessment. Now, date deemed skilled isn't for every single skills assessing body. It's basically only for Vet Assess and ACS. And again, this is New South Wales doing whatever they want again. So basically, some of these people, you're required to have like 3 or 4 or 5 years work experience to be able to meet the 3-year work experience, because ACS deduct some years off your skills assessment because that's just what they do, and they give you a date deemed skilled. I won't go through that in detail today. I'll do another separate video on that one. So just remember that you're using your date deemed skilled if your occupation requires work experience. But don't worry too much about what is on the website now. I reckon there's going to be some really exciting new changes in the new financial year. Secondly, also for onshore candidates, if you're not working in your occupation, you can still apply. You just had to have lived in New South Wales for at least 3 months before you apply. But then again, this whole thing doesn't make sense, because if you look at half the occupations, you need a 3 years work experience to apply anyway. So most people are already working in their field. As you can imagine, some people who have 3 years work experience in their field, they're probably still continually working in their field. So this stream just didn't make any sense. However, to be completely honest, some people who weren't working in their occupation were actually invited. So pretty crazy. And to my surprise, a lot of our offshore candidates were actually invited. The requirements were just that you had to meet whatever the occupation requirements are. So if it says that you need a 3 years work experience, you need 3 years work experience. But you had to be continuously residing offshore for at least 3 months before you apply, which applies to a lot of people. Now, again, you just had to have submitted an expression of interest on Skills Select. And New South Wales would actually pick up your EOI and then actually invite you if you meet the criteria at the time. So let's talk a little bit about who was invited and what they were actually looking for. So the way they work is really different to other states. The other states make you fill in another form, write a little bit of a submission, but New South Wales, none of that, which means that they're basically focusing on points and what their demand is at the time. So for New South Wales, yes, the points are more important. I reckon, and just remember for 190, when you do your skills select, you do get an extra 5 points for 190. So I will talk about raw points, which is without the 5 points, and then the full point, which is with the 5 points. So for example, we had clients that were invited at 90 points, which means they only had 85 points. They got an extra 5 points from the state. And there were people in IT who were working for over 3 years in their occupation. I don't think we had any clients that weren't working in the occupation and invited at 85 plus 5 points. We had some clients who weren't working in their occupation. There was no work experience requirement for that occupation, and they were invited at 90 plus 5 or 95 plus 5 points, which is actually pretty hard to achieve. You had to have basically ticked every single box. How does it work? Basically, once you've submitted your expression of interest, you just leave it there, okay? And if you are selected, you'll get this email from New South Wales, and it'll say invitation to apply. Congratulations, you received a pre-invitation. And then they'll give you a link to their portal, and then they will ask you to complete that application and submit it to them. To be honest, all this stuff is processed pretty quickly. Now, someone asked me how long does it take to actually get an invitation? It's so random. So we've had some that maybe got invited after 3 months. Some that was invited after like 2 days. I don't have any that was invited after a long period. So for those applicants who haven't been invited, say after 6 months, would be looking at doing a fresh expression of interest for them. I just don't understand how they manage to review all these applications. Like, can you imagine how many applications there are? Like, how would they be sorting through these? Like, I have no idea. There would be thousands, tens of thousands of applications. And they pick like, a couple of thousand each year. It's just not a lot at all. And some people were messaging me saying that, how come my friend who's the same occupation, same, the application is exactly the same as me, they had less the points than me and they were invited. And they said they called New South Wales and asked about it. And New South Wales like, that's impossible. That would never happen. But they're saying it did happen. And so I've heard it quite a bit. So I think there is some inconsistencies there. And I guess just the thing is that it seems like there is no exact method of how they're selecting, but it should be like this. It should be the demand for the occupation, the points, and then who lodged the EOI first. It should basically be like that. So I'm really not sure how it happened. So moving forward, what about the next financial year? Well, it appears like there's been a lot of activity in the department at the moment. And it seems like there is a huge focus on getting more skilled workers to Australia. So I'm really excited for the new financial year. I think there's going to be a lot of things happening. And the only thing we're hoping for now is that there's more seats available, more allocation, more quota. Someone asked me the other day, they're like, oh, how come these people in IT got invited? I have 105 points in accounting. Why haven't I been invited? And I was just like, yeah, that's a great question. So I don't know any accountants that were actually invited for the 190 in this round, even though they were actually on the occupation list for New South Wales. They ticked all the boxes, had the work experience, and they're like, why haven't I been invited? I just think at that time, the occupation wasn't in demand. And then someone asked me, will they start inviting accountants? Look, I think yes. I think they will start inviting. The only issue is that there is so many accountants. There is a lot. So the issue is that even if they start inviting and they have a lot, you're still in a pool of a lot of applicants. So number one, competition is high. Number two, there's so many people. And I think even if they do allocate a lot of spots to it, I just think that there's just so many. So that's the issue there. The other question is when they opened at the beginning of the financial year last year, so July, I can't remember, it was like July or August 2021. And then I think it was later on in the year, maybe December, they changed the requirements saying that some occupations require 3 years work experience. A lot of people are like, will they change that? Well, I think yes. I think they can't keep that for too long. I just think they had a lot of applicants and they just could pick and choose at that point. I think that they can't keep that 3 years work experience because a lot of people don't have that 3 years work experience. So if they keep it like that, they won't have any applicants. So I think that there will be some major changes. Anyways, that was a very general overview of what happened in New South Wales. And just to give you some idea, especially for new applicants looking to apply in the new financial year. As you know, we help with these applications. New South Wales is pretty tricky. It's probably one of the ones we focus a lot on because you can't get it wrong. Like, even if you get something wrong, the expression of interest, I've seen people come to me with a refusal where they said, hey, I lodged this, I changed the expression of interest after invitation, and then I got a refusal. Can you help me? And I'm like, whoa, like I can't believe that they don't even allow you to change something even if it doesn't change the points. So like attention to detail and get the right advice before you lodge these applications, because if you have a look, it says something like you can't be re-nominated again or something. So be very, very careful with that. Anyways, if you need assistance, feel free to contact our office below. We have a big team working in Sydney at the moment that specialise in these sort of applications. In the next video, I'm going to talk about the 190 visa in South Australia, talk about some of my experiences and some tips moving forward for the new financial year. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked that video, please don't forget to like and subscribe and share it with people who need it.